This is a Sexpot comedy production.
Hey, everybody! Welcome to another episode of Talkin Shop. I think we're coming close to 50 now, which is shocking me.
Woo.
But yeah, man, for those that's never listened to this before, I'm the host and creator of this, Anthony Crawford. And basically, this is the most selfish thing I've ever created. And I can't believe people actually like this. But I basically picked the best people in the comedy world, not necessarily comics, but people in the comedy world to come up, tell us how they do what they do. And really, I just do it to try to steal ideas and thoughts and try to figure out new ways of going at things. And the whole purpose of this is one day I want to pick the brain of Dave Chappelle and Chris Rock. Until then, I find the best people I can find, and by no means is today an exception to that rule. But before I introduce her, I always like to drop a little advice, I guess, if you will. And this one is today, mainly for those that are having writer's block. If you're having writer's block, don't be ashamed to go back to old jokes and work on them, tweak them. You know, especially old jokes you haven't done in a year or two. Go back. Tweak them. See if you can get new life out of them. You know, or go do something that you've never done before. You know, for instance, I was having writer's block for a little while, and my funny Final Four team captain Steve Vanderploeg took me to a hockey game, and yeah, new fire. I've never thought I would get so much material out of hockey. It was great. It was at some point when they started playing 3-6 Mafia during the hockey match where I was like, I might be home. And it was great, man. And I'm starting to write on that, and it got me thinking of different things I've experienced and started writing on that. And yeah, doing something new definitely works, man. Hang out with new people. Go somewhere you never been before. You know, like anything to get them creative juices flowing, especially if you're not one of those guys that can just sit down and dedicate writing jokes for an hour each day. I'm just not one of those guys. I can't do that. I'll end up just playing games on my phone. I'm just that guy. But yeah, man, do anything you can do to get them creative juices flowing. Try to figure out some new way to get those jokes. Now, without further ado, I want to bring up the lovely lady to my left. I've been calling her the Denver comedy Wonder Woman. If you've done anything in Denver performance-wise in comedy, there's a good chance she was running it. And she's the best, man. Give it up for Karen Wachtel, everybody. Karen Wachtel.
Thank you. You're giving me way too much credit, but sure, I'll take it.
Hey, man, I appreciate you so much. For those that do not know this lady, she has saved so many ideas and shows for people, including myself. If you have ever posted on, "Hey, I'm coming to Denver," yeah, I don't really run that anymore because I couldn't deal with it. It was end up having like 30 requests or something after a while, and I appreciate it so much, man. What made you start running stuff in comedy? When did that all start?
It kind of happened gradually. I started going to comedy. I mean, I've been a huge comedy fan for a long time, but mainly like Comedy Works and more mainstream stuff, and started going to Grawlix far after I should have started going to Grawlix, and quickly became addicted to everything. Like I just kept going to shows over and over and over again, and was out most nights going to comedy shows. And pretty quickly, I knew about High Plains already. I hadn't gone to the first year, but I'd really wanted to. And I knew Andy Jewett and Adam Caton Holland, and so I introduced myself to them pretty early on and was like, I want to help in any way I can with the festival. I do events for a living outside of comedy, so I kind of had an in that way, and yeah, just kind of kept bullying them until they let me help the second year, and yeah, I don't know. I guess I'm not idle very well. Like I need to be doing stuff. So to go to comedy shows, as much as I enjoy it, it makes me kind of like anxious, and I want to keep moving, and I want to be helping, and I want to just be contributing in some way. So that's what I started doing.
Oh man, and I appreciate it so much, man. Now, when you started working with High Plains, what capacity did they have you like? What did they mainly have you doing?
Well, Charlene Conley was kind of acting as a producer for them at that point. Charlene has helped with Bridgetown Comedy Festival for almost all of the years it's existed, and moved up to be an executive producer, I believe, there. She's had to step back a little bit in recent years just because of her job, but she is a wealth of information, the likes of which I have never known. So she was kind of running it for them that year, and so they eventually pawned me off on her because they were like, yeah, Charlene's dealing with volunteers, talk to her. So I hit her up and told her about my experience, and she's like, yeah, I need you. Just show up and be there the whole time and just be like my right-hand person. Yeah. So I served that role, and I helped her because she didn't know Denver as well. So I was able to kind of like jump in and help in that way. And yeah, she just kind of like took me with her wherever she was going and taught me all the stuff. And then it worked out that she wasn't going to be able to help at that same level the next year. So I got promoted pretty quickly, which was nice.
Nice. Now do you, I like High Plains mainly because they don't do something that I tend to suck at, which is they don't take videos. It's all invite only. And thank you so much, because I suck at making videos. But are you one of the people that like decides who comes, or? You know,
in the past couple of years, it's really been Adam, who is the main booker. He for sure will turn to me, especially for local talent, as he's spending more time in LA.
Right.
But national, he chooses most of them. We also get feedback from a lot of people. So this year we sent out a survey to everybody who was in High Plains the last 2 years and asked them for people who might not be on our radar. There's, I love that we don't do submissions. It definitely saves us some time. It doesn't take money away from comedians. Like, there's so many reasons that I love that we're curated, but the downside of that is that it's can be tougher to discover new talent outside of Denver. And it also doesn't necessarily give people a chance. Like, people are like, well, how do I get into your festival? And I'm like, I don't know, just be somebody we know. And that's not, it's not really that easy. So.
It's not what you know, it's who you know, baby. So what all other festivals do you work with?
So I've been helping at Bridgetown for the last 2 years, and I'll go back this year.
Nice.
The first year I helped as a venue coordinator there, and then last year I was what they called a performer liaison, which was like the most fun job ever. I just checked all the performers in and made sure that they had what they needed.
Nice.
So that was a pretty sweet gig, and I think I'll probably be doing something fairly similar this year, maybe also helping with book travel and stuff. But and then not this past year, but the year before, I was the staff coordinator for Riot LA, which is another awesome festival. Yeah, and then I've gotten to just kind of like go to some festivals and learn some stuff, not by working, but just by being there. So I've been to Red Clay Comedy Festival in Atlanta, and I'm going to South by Southwest in a couple of weeks, which I'm really excited about.
Nice. Yeah. We actually have some questions popping in. Let me get one of these real quick. We have one from at Open Air Jesse.
Who?
Which is Karen, what is your dream showcase lineup?
This is like the hardest question. Oh man, there's so many comedians that I just like really adore. And it's like the dream is probably people who I haven't seen a lot of. God, I don't know. Like, there's people who I will see every time they're in Denver that are just reliably, like, I just went to see Matt Bronner when he was here, and he's just like, he will just give me pure joy every time I see him. And I mean, I've seen his set before. It's not like it's new material or anything, but I was actually talking to at Open Air Jesse before the show, and we were talking about the fact that like the best performers, it's almost less about the material and more about like the gut feeling they give you, and the fact that you want to experience them. So for sure, material helps with that. But it's also kind of goes beyond that. So there's some people that I can just see their jokes over and over and over again, and it's like a new experience every time. And then there's other comedians that's like, yeah, they're amazing comedians, but I mean, like, I went to see Gary Gulman and when he was just in town, and he is fantastic. But I probably wouldn't go to see him every week. So I just think that there's like, but yeah, back to the dream lineup. I don't know. Maria Bamford would probably be in there. I mean, they're all kind of cliched answers, like Louis C.K. I mean, Dave Chappelle I've seen probably more than any other comedian outside of Denver.
I get that.
I just, like, because I've been seeing him for so long. Like, I've been seeing him at Comedy Works for ages. So he would be in there for sure. Man, I know there's like a ton that I'm forgetting, but yeah. There's too many to name. And then there's a ton of Denver and like recent Denver people who would be in that list, but I also feel weird saying them because I kind of feel like that's showing some weird favoritism.
I get that. Well, I mean, if you're on the podcast, I think it's all right if you go ahead and say who they are.
Anthony Crawford.
I'll just go ahead. But are there any events that you want to end up working with here in Denver or anywhere else?
I mean, Denver, I feel like I've been able to do some fun stuff. Like in the past, I've helped out with like Westward Music Showcase and stuff. I would love to help more with UMS at some point. I've volunteered there, but I haven't really like done it at a bigger level. But it's also not my forte. Like, I don't know music the way that I've come to know comedy. So it's a little tougher. And then I would love to go to like Bonnaroo or Moon Tower or any of those. I kind of just like the experience of just doing new festivals. I love going to Bridgetown every year, but it's also nice to kind of see how other things run. High Plains was pretty mirrored after Bridgetown in terms of like, because Charlene was helping us so much, we built a lot of our structure on what Bridgetown does. And Riot LA, she kind of similarly weighed in on. So it was nice to see other festivals like Red Clay, and it'll be good to see South by Southwest because they're so different. So,
nice.
Yeah, it'll be fun.
Have you done much with the clubs here in Denver?
No, not at all. I'd love to work more with Comedy Works, but I also don't know that they need me. They seem to have things pretty dialed in. We do work with Comedy Works Entertainment, Mike Raftery, for High Plains. They partner with us for the headlining show, so which I love. That's super fun. But Comedy Works, hit me up.
Yeah.
You clearly need some help, okay?
Yeah, that goes double for me. How Comedy Works, hit me up, man. All right. God, I just had a brain fart. I had a question for you. I just had a brain fart. Who got one? Anybody got one? Save me real quick. Anybody got one real quick? Anybody?
Jesse does.
Just tweeted it. Tell us about working on 51st Jokes.
Ooh, 51st Jokes?
Yeah,
How was
so Timmy Lastly, who is really comedy's angel. I mean, come on. The fact that she didn't win Unsung Hero last night is a crying shame. She works her ass off to make everything in Denver better. And she has much more influence over way more shows than I do. I definitely cherry pick, and she does a lot of them. So yeah, Timmy has been doing 51st Jokes since it's been in Denver. So this was the third year that it was in Denver. And the first year, she asked me to do a poster, which I do graphic design sometimes, but it's definitely not like the main thing I do. But I was inspired and loved doing a poster that was like an 8-bit video game poster, which I still love.
That was real cool. By the way.
So I was involved in that way that first year, just showed up and sold the posters. And then last year, helped out a little bit more, but still was just kind of like helping organize. And then both Timmy and John F. O'Donnell, who started 51st Jokes in New York, asked me to come on as a producer this year, just so that I could handle some of the kind of more the details that like I love doing, but most comedians do not, and I get it. So, it's, I've said this to Timmy before and to other comedians/producers, is that it's really easy to be a producer when you're not a comedian because you don't have to worry about pissing anybody off. There's not that same if I don't let that person on the show, then they're not going to let me on their show, or they're going to be upset with me or whatever. It's like, I kind of get to do what I want to do. So it's nice. It's nice having somebody, I think, on board that you can kind of almost blame and just be like, hey, the producer said we have to do it this way, and there was nothing I fought for you, but there was just nothing I could do. So. Not that Timmy does that at all. No, but so so just helping with like budget and helping with the lineup and getting everybody organized, and 50 comedians on a show is like herding cats times infinity. So I often, like on Twitter, part of my description is Chuckle Wrangler, and I feel like that's really what I do more than anything, is just wrangle people.
Have you ever ran like your own show, like one you created, or have you ever thought of doing that?
I haven't, and I don't know. I mean, maybe I would be inspired to at some point. I'm not. I'm definitely like an implementer and an executor. Like I figure out how to get stuff done, but I'm not necessarily like a visionary. I'm pretty high critical thinker, so usually when I have ideas, I'm like, this is why this wouldn't work, and it's why I'm a good balance to a lot of comedians, is that they have the big idea, and then I just like try to figure out how to actually make it function. But doing it on my own, I think I would just be like, no, I could never do that.
I get that. So when we gonna see that Wachtel Hot 5 on stage?
Never. The fact that you got me on a mic now is like a miracle.
All right. I got another question in. What's something that's misunderstood about the role of a comedy producer?
I mean, I think that it kind of like, it goes almost to extremes. That I think there are people who call themselves producers, and that really what they did was that they're a show creator, and that it's kind of like, well, I made it, and that's what I have to do. But then it also, I think, goes to the other extreme where people assume that producers are like too concerned about. I think that people think I'm much more serious and much meaner than I actually am in my day-to-day life, because when it comes down to it, especially with a festival, I kind of feel like it's my job. It's not really my job to like be nice and be everybody's friend. It's my job to give the audience the best experience they can have. And that also means giving the comedians a great experience, but it doesn't mean putting the comedians first. It means always putting the audience first. And I think that that's one thing that comedy in general sometimes struggles with, is that it's kind of like, it's a party and it's a good time, and it should be. It should be a good time. But it can be a good time, and it can also be something that is worth what the audience is spending on it. Like, so.
I get that.
Yeah.
Is there a venue you want to get your hands on?
Ooh. I would love to do like more with bigger venues. Like I definitely help out with the headlining show at High Plains, which is at Paramount Theater. But I'd really like to do more of that, like more like booking bigger venues and helping coordinate getting the shows to run well. I mean, I love doing stuff at the Bug, and obviously the venues we have for High Plains, which are Mutiny and Three Kings and High Dive, are fantastic. But it would also be great to get like a venue where it's like a theater, a big theater.
Yeah.
It's great.
I get that. All right, we got one more in. Where do you want to see the comedy scene here in Denver go in the future? And I totally misread this. All right, let me go back.
It was a good question.
Oh, thanks. Hey, man, I'm riff. Where do you want to see the Denver comedy scene go, and how do you think we can get it there?
I just want it to like continue to thrive, because I think that it's in a really good place in terms of obviously a lot of amazing comedians have come out of and are still in Denver. but it's also like because there's been so many shifts and people moving and everything else that there's a lot of new blood, and I want that new group to make their own thing that thrives and that like makes them noticeable and that keeps Denver on the map, because I think that first group got Denver on the map for sure. I mean, Denver is on the map. It's part of the national discussion, which I think is huge for not being a coast city. So I just want them to like continue to do the work and see Denver thrive. And the only thing I'm kind of concerned about in that regard is that I think that some of the newer comedians have seen the success of the first group and they weren't necessarily there to witness the work up to that. And so it's kind of viewed as like, well, this is what you do in Denver, is that you like start doing comedy very soon after you start your own show. That show becomes wildly successful. Then you get a web series and then you're on TV.
Yeah, because it's that
done.
easy.
And so I think it's just a matter of like knowing that there's a lot of work to put in and a lot of years, and making it from Denver is not necessarily something that everybody can do. Like, it's as much as attention as it gets now, and as I hope it continues to get, it's not LA and it's not New York. And so that's why people move, and it's why some people value Denver more than they necessarily value like trying to make that next leap. So I think no matter what you want to do, if you want to try to make it from here, if you want to try to make it from LA or New York, I think that's great. I just don't think that the assumption should be that I do X and Y and Z and then I obtain success.
I get that. That's good, right? Ooh.
Hello, Miss Karen Wachtel.
Hello.
Hello, Timmy.
I know you're an avid podcast consumer. You listen to a lot of them. So I have a two-part question. One, what are some of your favorite podcasts and why? And two, what do you think the value of doing a podcast is for a comic, and would you suggest it to people that do comedy? You get it. You understand.
It's a good question. So for the ones that I listen to, man, I listen to so many.
Talkin Shop.
Of course, Talkin Shop.
Bang.
Of course.
Staple.
I listen to My Favorite Murder because I like true crime and because I love Karen Kilgariff. She would also be on my dream lineup. And I listen to Bitch Sesh because I'm obsessed with Casey Wilson. And like then I listen to a bunch like Baby Geniuses, which is fantastic. That's Emily Heller. And Pop Rocket, which is Guy Branum. I tend to listen to podcasts because of who's on them, and of course, How Did This Get Made? Like, How Did This Get Made was like one of the first things I started listening to, and I'm like, I could just listen to that over and over again. But yeah, I tend to listen because of the people on it, less than, I mean, the subject matter matters, but it's really the people that are on it. I was talking to somebody the other day about how some people feel like podcasts should never be more than 15 minutes or 20 minutes or whatever, that there's like a sweet spot. And to me, it's like, if it's a good podcast, go on for 3 hours and I'll listen to it. Yep. But yeah, and then in terms of whether I think that there's value to starting one if you have a fairly unique idea. I don't know that there's any new ideas in podcasts at this point.
It's kind of rough now.
But I think that you should only do it as long as it's something that you really enjoy doing, and that it's like it's doing something for you personally rather than trying to pursue it just out of hoping that it gets you somewhere professionally. Because I think that it's very hard to get noticed in the podcast world right now.
Yeah.
And
thanks, Mark Maron.
But yeah, I mean, like, I think Adam did kind of the right thing where he had this podcast as long as he enjoyed doing it, and as long as he got to talk to people he wanted to talk to, and then he was like, well, I'm done now. And I think that's totally fine to just be like, I'm in and I'm out. And but yeah, I think start one if you feel like inspired to start one, because why not?
Nice. I got one of those selfish questions that I was talking about earlier for you there, Karen. How do you go about reaching out and booking some of the higher level comics?
It kind of depends on circumstances. I will be totally honest in that a lot of it is personal relationships with Adam. Like, he knows a lot of comedians, or knows them at least, through people. So a lot of it happens that way, or happens when he is at a show with them or at a festival with them or whatever. For the ones that come to us through recommendations, we will either approach them directly and just say, hey, we run a festival and here's kind of what the offer is or whatever. Or sometimes we'll go through agents and managers, but we don't do a lot of that just because comedians like being at festivals more than their representation likes them to be at festivals. Which I get.
I get that.
I mean, it's like a fun time for comedians, but it's also not. They usually don't get the monetary value that they would out of a normal show.
I get that. Now, that was one. That was cool. Where'd it go? Oh, what are some of your talent pet peeves when working on a show?
I think one of the hardest things is that, like I said, like, people get into comedy because they want to have a good time. Like, they don't get, I don't think many people get into comedy and, like, take it super seriously from the start. And I don't want them to, because I don't think that's a good way to pursue a passion. But I think that at the point when you get to being on showcases and certainly being on a festival, that you have to approach it with some professionalism. And I think that a lot of people party their opportunities away. So it's kind of like they get a shot at being on a showcase maybe that they wouldn't normally be on, or a festival, or even if they're just like in the crowd at a show that they eventually want to be on. And then and then they like just are idiots in one way or the other. Like, they're either rude or they talk during, I mean, that's a huge pet peeve, is that one of my big jobs during festivals especially, but during any show, is keeping the room quiet, and almost exclusively the people talking are other comedians. And I kind of get that it's because you guys have seen each other's sets and that you're not, so it's like, why would I pay attention to this when I've seen them 20 other times? But think about what the audience is experiencing, and if you want them to come back to a comedy show, and especially your comedy show, realize that you talking during it is going to do the opposite. Like, that there's nothing that bugs me more as an audience member than people talking. And when it's another comedian, I'm just like, but why? And it always is. It always is. So just remove yourself from the room. But yeah, just being professional. And also, I think that a lot of times, some people, when they get like a little bit of success, they feel like they need to kind of like put on this swagger to kind of like feel like they're important. So especially if they get on a festival or they get on a show. And so then they don't treat people very well that are there to help. And I think you never know who's a volunteer and who's going to be a bigger person in the scene. I mean, it just seems really dumb to me to be rude to anybody, frankly, but especially to people who are helping the show or festival run. So I know that Charlene, when she was here, I'm not going to name any names, so hopefully this was, except for Charlene's, so hopefully hopefully she's not upset about that. Well, I know that she was here the first year, and she was acting as a stage manager in one of the venues because they were shorthanded, and she had to do that. So she was lighting a comedian, and that person was just blowing the light, and then was rude to her when they got off the stage, and was like, wow. I know what I'm doing, honey, basically, like, don't you worry. And that person has never gotten into Bridgetown, and it's probably partly because of that. So it's kind of like, I think that like, just realizing that, especially the volunteers and the people there to help, to treat them as well as you can. You don't have to kiss anybody's ass or anything, but just like, don't be a dick and don't be an idiot.
It seems to be the ongoing theme of this podcast. I think everyone has said it during the episode. Don't be a dick. Just be a nice guy. Oh, how do you go about shutting people up? Are you nice about it? Do you shush them? Do you?
It depends. If it's comedians that I know, I'm not super nice about it because I feel like they should know better. So it's more of like, it's almost like a look, and it's just like, but if if it's other people, I try to give them a warning, and I try to give them a nice warning, and it's usually like a, hey, I don't think you realize how much your voice is carrying, or, you know, it's getting kind of loud in here. Could you help us keep it down? Like, kind of like, hey, we're on the same side here. I'm not attacking you. But I escalate pretty quickly if people don't listen after the first time. And I'm not above throwing somebody out and asking somebody to leave. And I tend to do it at shows that I have nothing to do with. So, because it bugs me so much. I won't do it at Comedy Works, but I wish I could.
Now, with venues like High Dive, for example, where the bar's on one side and the audience is sitting on the other side, how do you go about trying to control that bar side?
Yeah, High Dive is like one of the toughest. I love it, but it's one of the toughest venues because people who are at the bar feel like somehow their voices don't carry.
Yeah.
It's weird. It is bizarre. I mean, Adam had his album released there, and it was all friends and people who definitely know better, and it was the loudest I've ever seen it. Like, they didn't even shut up for him.
Jeez.
And I think, you know, sometimes a comedian can for sure help, and I think that it's the sign of a really strong comedian if they can handle not only hecklers but just loud audience members efficiently. Like, I don't want them to like detract from their set. I mean, sometimes it gets really funny, like Sam Talent, and that's awesome. But otherwise, like, I don't want it to become like a whole thing. But I do want them. I think they have a lot of power of shaming people into being quiet, and I think some comedians are better than others at it. But yeah, otherwise, I just tell the venue coordinator for High Dive to just constantly patrol, like, back and forth, and just like essentially just make hand motions for people to be as quiet as they can. It doesn't work. I mean, we try our best, but like, if anybody has some kind of magic, like something that we can do to make people not be able to talk for the length of a show, I will invest in that. Muzzles. We're gonna start doing High Plains branded muzzles. It's gonna be amazing.
Now, is there a show that kind of faded away that you wished you could have came in and helped?
I'm certainly not a show rescuer. Like, I appreciate that you give me that credit. That's not true. And I'm involved in a handful of shows, I would say, and not the vast majority in Denver. There are so many shows in Denver, which is amazing.
Yeah, there are.
But so, for example, I loved Crush City. I love Aaron. I love Jordan, and I wanted that to succeed, and I did. I tried to help at the end, and I couldn't save it. And it's not a matter of like. It's just sometimes. I think finding a good venue is so paramount and so tough. And once you've done it, I feel like if you can't make a successful show, then that's your problem. Like, I can come in and rescue a show if you have a good venue.
Yeah.
But if you don't have a solid venue that gives you a lot of support, like, and I was listening to the Fort Comedy Talkin Shop before this, and like, they mentioned the same thing, that's so huge in running a good show, is that if you have a venue that either doesn't care whether you're there or actively doesn't want you there, then it's not going to work.
Right.
So I wish Crush City, but then that would also have required me kidnapping Jordan or something and forcing him not to move. So I guess I couldn't have done that.
Hey, are there any mistakes you made producing shows that you learned from that you'll never make that mistake again? Any learning moments?
God, I'm sure. I'm sure there are a ton. I don't know. I can't, like, I'm trying to think of any off the top of my head. There's none off the top of my head. I've made a lot of mistakes, but I feel like I just like kind of course correct. But the other thing is that, like I said, I've been in events for quite a while, and events are events. Like, there's definitely specific things to comedy events that are different, but for the most part, it's like, make sure it runs well, make sure the audience has a good time, make sure the performers have as good of a time as they can, while still making sure the audience has a good time, because they're the ones paying. And yeah, I don't feel like I don't know that it's brain surgery once you have a great venue and good performers.
Have y'all ever thought of making High Plains longer? Not necessarily more days. I mean, just because like most of the shows started like 5, 6.
Yeah,
like that.
so we did expand this year a little bit into the Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
We did more shows during Saturday day, and then we also did shows against the headlining show.
Mm-hmm.
So we did more shows this year than we've done in the past. But we don't really have any interest in making it bigger. Like I think there's temptation there because it's like, oh man, you could pack in more performers and you could like make it a bigger deal. But I think that you risk everybody just kind of getting a little bit more like it's not as special then. Like if there's only 3 days, and those 3 days, yeah, the Thursday and Friday are limited to kind of after work hours,
right?
And then Saturday is all day. And I think that it kind of makes people feel like, ooh, I better take advantage of it, and I better get in while I can. And it also allows the performers a little bit of downtime while they're here. I've seen Bridgetown over the last couple of years, and especially even before I got there, kind of got really big, and last year they expanded to 5 days, and it's a lot. Like it's a lot on the staff, and it's a lot on the volunteers, and it's a lot on the performers. I mean, I think what the performers end up getting, I think, a little fried, because it's just like it's fun, but that's a lot of partying and a lot of performing.
Yeah, it is.
And 5 days is a lot of days to sustain that.
It is. Good God. Let's see. How do you recommend newer comics to get? Reading's difficult, guys. How do you recommend newer comics get on your or producer's radar for High Plains?
The same way that you get on the radar for everything, which is you go to open mics and then you get on showcases. And then I see you at a showcase, or Adam sees you at a showcase, or somebody who I trust sees you at a showcase, and they're like, you got to see this person. And I think pretty reliably I end up seeing people. It's rare that I'm like, where has this person been? I've never heard anything about them. It happens. But for the most part, they're at least on my radar in terms of I've heard their name, and I've seen them on lineup. I've seen, that they are on lineups, whether I've been able to see them in person or not. Mm-hmm. Ramping up here, probably in the next few months, I'll make a point of going to more showcases and going to more new talent nights and just kind of having my eyes open more. But I would say that, again, don't be a dick and don't be an idiot, because I think as much as it's important to get on not necessarily my radar, but our collective radar, it's more important not to get on my radar in a bad way, or any of our radar. Like I don't have, like I said, I don't make the decisions of who to book, but Adam trusts me. So if I say that I'm not really that cool with somebody, he'll probably be like, oh, well, then we won't put them on. Unless it's somebody who's like, I mean, the thing is that you have to be so funny to make up for being a dick or an idiot. So instead, just be good and solid. And because that's the thing is that if you're undeniably funny, you're undeniably funny. And at some point you'll probably catch a break, but that has to be like crazy funny. And even then I have to believe that those people did something good in their past to maybe they turned into maybe now they're not such nice people, but I think somewhere along the way they probably were, or else they wouldn't have gotten the breaks that they did.
I have that. All right. We got any more questions out there? Any more? All right, posing for the picture. What's up, Wally? How you doing, brother?
I will give you a little bit of advice, just because I don't have to view submissions, but I've heard a lot about what makes for a good submission, so I can talk a little bit about that.
Go on that, girl. I need all you can give
which
me on
is, which it sounds so easy, and I know it's not this easy, but for one thing, so if a submission tape is 5 to 7 minutes, make sure that it's a solid 5 to 7 minutes and it's not cutting all over the place, because then they don't know whether you're solidly good or whether you're just handpicking your best jokes. Mm-hmm. Don't bother putting the intro in there, because you're just wasting time. Your name will be on the tape, and they want to see the best 5 to 7 minutes that you can present, and usually the introduction takes some time. So, obviously make sure that they can clearly hear you, clearly see you. Andy Wood, who was one of the founders of Bridgetown, was just telling me and showing me a tape that he did. And granted, it's at, I think it was at Meltdown, so it's like a pretty good room for getting tape, but he just did it on his cell phone. So it's possible to do cheaply, and but it's just a matter of setting it up so that they can clearly see you, clearly hear you, and that you are coming through stronger than the audience. Like, obviously you want to hear some audience reaction and, get that in there, but it shouldn't be all about the audience. And then I think obviously the most important thing, and again, easier said than done, but just like set yourself apart. Like, if you're gonna do a trope, if you're gonna do a cliche, you better have like a brand new take on it. Cause like they've heard a lot of bearded dudes talk about craft beer. So if you don't have a new take on it, bearded white dudes, like, don't talk about craft beer. Or like, and you might have a new take on it. I've heard plenty of super funny jokes about craft beer, but it better be an original take. And same with like hot girls talking about how they poop. Like, we get it. You do that, but there's plenty of girls who talk about that. So it's like setting yourself apart, especially Bridgetown they make a priority of putting a certain amount of female performers in and a certain amount of minority performers in. Mm-hmm. And so, a lot of times you'll hear you shouldn't even bother applying if you're a white dude. And that's not true, but you do have to do more to make yourself stand apart.
It is funny how white guys are all of a sudden being the victim all of a sudden now, isn't it?
God, don't you feel sorry for them? It's so sad. It's so sad. But they do. I think it is harder to set yourself apart. You have to and again, Jordan Dahl is like the perfect example that you can be a bearded white dude and set yourself apart. Yeah. You just have to actually have like the material and the personality to do it. But it is going to be tougher. Mm-hmm. And so you have to be memorable, and that I think is the toughest thing, but the most important thing.
Yeah, I'd like to add on to that. It's the same for black comics. We really have a bad stigma on not telling jokes for some reason, and we scream a lot.
Just be loud
and cuss a lot, and like real misogynist, and only talk about race, and like, dude, we're not all like that. You don't have to be that, But
well, the other thing I would say is that, like, and this goes to that, is that like the more authentically you can be, go past the surface level, because if you're surface level, you're yelling a lot and talking about what everybody else is talking about. But if you're talking about your specific experience, it's so much easier to set yourself apart, because nobody has the same experience. So just try to figure out, like, how much can I let people in and do it in a funny way. I don't know how to do it, but you guys do. So do that.
I was about to say, you sure we ain't gonna get that hat fired from you, Karen? I was about to say, you preaching some truth there, baby. Let's see. I had one, and then that last one got me.
Sorry.
No, you cool. You're just captivating, girl. What was it? I forget it. All right, look. Is there anything else you would love for me to know, or my audience to know?
High Plains is going to be the 24th through the 26th of August, and we're probably going to have some big announcements either next week or the week following, because we're booking some people.
Hell yeah.
So yeah, it's going to be a good time, so make sure you're coming out for it.
Hell yeah, man. We got any questions here, guys? Any more? Any of them? All right, I think I'm going to wrap this up like I normally do. Ask the same two questions I ask everyone. So the first question I ask you is, what is your biggest pet peeve that you see show producers doing? People that like just put on shows. What's your biggest pet peeve with that?
I think just not thinking of the audience experience. I think especially comedian producers tend to think of, again, the comics experience before the audience, and that's fine if you don't care if you have an audience.
Yeah.
Because at some point you need people who are not comedians to show up to your show and make it successful, and you need to think about how they experience that, and focus on it.
There's that. That's solid. I've been screaming that for years. Hopefully y'all will listen to Karen. No one's listening to me. And the The last question I ask you, sweetheart, is what do you wish more people that put on shows would do more often?
More often. I think, it's kind of the same answer, but I think just like reaching out beyond the Denver comedy community, because I know so many people that I think and it's hard to get to those people, but once you get to them, they're like, what? All of this is happening in Denver? I had no idea.
Mm-hmm.
So like figuring out a way to kind of not just invite comedians to shows, but actually like get the public there and, get exposure to it.
How do you go about doing that?
I think if you have a show that is newsworthy, doing a press release and getting some free press on it is super important. Adding it to event calendars. There's a bunch of different ways I think that you can do it, and promotion through social media and everything. But I think the most important thing is that you have a really solid show that's ready for a public audience. Because if you don't, then getting them there isn't really going to do much except for make them feel like they shouldn't go to a comedy show again. So, I want you to get an audience there if you're ready for an audience. If you're not, just keep inviting comics because that's going to be the best bet.
All right. How do people get a hold of you, Karen? How do you put your social media out there if you want it? If you don't,
I'm on Facebook. I don't tend to friend people unless I at least met them. I get a lot of requests where I'm like, I'm not a comedian. You know that, right? I'm on Twitter at KAYDUBCO, KDubco, and I'm also on Instagram on the same, but I haven't tweeted in a long time. But yeah, that's how they find me.
All right, cool. Anything you want to plug before we wrap this up?
Just High Plains.
Just High Plains.
Yeah, just High Plains.
Right, shortly after my birthday, we'll be up in here celebrating all down South Broadway with a bunch of ridiculous people, probably way too high and drunk. All right, so
don't get high before you're set. Sorry, I didn't bring that up earlier.
Oh yeah, we've had some moments.
We've had some moments, and it's just. That goes with the professionalism thing. Don't be an idiot. Don't get so stoned that you can't do your set.
Yeah, we have had moments there and there. Hey man, the weed's great here. But thank you so much for doing this, Karen.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
You're a jewel, man. Keep doing what you're doing. I appreciate everything, man. Yeah, Karen Wachtel, everybody.
Thank you.
Beautiful. All right, ladies and gentlemen, the next episode of Talkin Shop will be March 9th. And I got two guys coming up here. I got Dennis Flippin and James McElwee. For those who don't know, they are behind the scenes guys. James McElwee just was a sound engineer on The Hateful Eight. And Dennis Flippin, well, he films just about everything. If you look at his video roll, he filmed everybody from Obama to Jordan. So we're going to have him in here if you got any audio video questions. That'll be the time you want to come here and show up because both these guys are amazing. With that being said, hey man, I'm Anthony Crawford. Thank y'all for showing up. We'll talk shop again in 2 weeks. Thanks, guys.
This has been a Sexpot Comedy Joint, collaborative, community-driven comedy produced by Andy Jewett and Kayvon Kalatvari. Headquartered in Denver, Colorado, with technical support from Isaac Miller. Every day at sexpotcomedy.com or at a show near you. Until next time, be well, friends.